Hey, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you might be joining us from in the world today. My name is Meg Alexander, and I am, as always, honored and excited to get to host another Power to Fly Chat and Learn virtual event. Now, today we're going to be talking with Maria Lee from Moody's about what it's like to be in leadership as a woman in finance. But before we dive in here, I just want to go over some quick housekeeping. This stuff will be especially important if today is your first event with Power to Fly. And if that's the case, then hi, welcome. We're so happy to meet you. Now, if you are one of our frequent flyers, the love is no less real. Thank you all so much for joining us, especially at an earlier time period than we usually do, or at least that I usually host. So very excited to see all of you. I love seeing your familiar names, faces, and avatars in the chat. So thank you all so very much. Now, I want to encourage y'all, whether it's your first event or your 50th, to participate. You can do that in a number of different ways. And if you took time to come here and watch us live, hi YouTube, if you're watching us over there, we want to make sure that we reward you for that and that you're able to get the most out of today's event. So if you'd like to participate, I very much encourage you to turn your cameras on. You're very much welcome to share your smiling, maskless faces with us safely. But truly, y'all, there is no need to be Instagram perfect. We do not care if you're coming to us in a three-piece suit or your bathrobe, all right? It makes no difference to us. We just want to meet you where you are, whether that is in a corner office or at your dining room table. Now, if you do want to participate, but you don't want to do so with your camera, that's okay. You don't have to participate with your camera. If you want to chime in the chat, we would love to hear and see y'all hanging out over there as well. So feel free to dive in there. Now, as we go through today's event, we are recording. Now, what that means for you is you don't have to take notes, okay? You get to sit back, relax, enjoy the conversation that I'm about to have with Maria. And not worry if you miss a reference or a resource that someone listed. You can always go back and rewatch this recording. Now, what's going to happen is in about probably like 4 to 5 business days, Power to Fly is going to send y'all an email with a link to where this recording has been posted on our website on powertofly.com. Now, let's say that Maria says something just mind-blowing, paradigm-shifting, amazing new nugget of information that you have to share with a friend or coworker or a relative, and you don't want to wait 4 to 5 business days. That's okay. You can always head over to our YouTube channel. We'll share links for all this in the chat as we go. But you can head to our YouTube channel where we are also live streaming. Hi, YouTube. And on our channel, there's some great stuff there. There's a best of kind of our greatest hits live there, some of our favorite chats and past events. I do also very much encourage you though, y'all, to check out the recording on our website, once it's live there. There is a massive, that's where our entire archive of all of our past events is on, everything from the beginning of Lunch and Learns with Lauren Haggerty all the way through today. So I very much encourage you to take advantage of those resources. That's how we think we're going to move the needle when it comes to true gender parity and pay equity in the workplace. So please, y'all, feel free to avail yourself of all of those free resources. Now, I also want to encourage all of you, like I said, to write in the chat. So feel free to dive in there. Let us know where you're joining us from. I'm coming to you from Toledo, Ohio. This is land that belonged to the Fox, Kickapoo, and Potawatomi tribes in my area. So I'd really encourage y'all to share where you're calling in from and if you know whose land you're on. And then quick visual descriptor, because I realized I forgot to give that at the start. My name is Meg Alexander. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am a 38-year-old white woman with pink glasses, a blue t-shirt, and pink and purple hair. Now, the last thing I want to touch on before, we've got people chiming in from Germany. Awesome, love it. And I know we've got our guest is here with us in China. We've got Boston represented, San Francisco Bay Area. Ooh, more of Ohio. Awesome. Love seeing so many people. Thank you so much for coming out this morning, y'all. Atlanta as well. Thanks, Kiana. All right, so as we are diving into the chat, just one thing I want to remind you of is this quick code of conduct, okay? It looks scary, it looks like a lot of legal jargon. Basically what it boils down to is don't be a jerk, okay? Just as we interact with our fellow attendees, or if you want to reach out to speakers or to Moody's themselves, just make sure that, as always, we're operating from a place of kindness and respect. If you have any questions on that, please feel free to ask me. You can type in the group chat. If you have a question or a comment that you would like answered or raised anonymously, you can always DM me in the group chat as well. So please feel free to do that. Now, I do encourage y'all to follow Moody's on their company page on powertofly.com. Again, we're going to share links for all of this in the chat thread. But what you're seeing right now is Moody's company page on powertofly.com. Now, there's some great stuff on here. There's an overview. You can look at events that'll give you past events like this that they've participated in. Company Insights is going to be really helpful for some kind of background on the company. But also there's the Jobs tab, which is always everybody's favorite. It's where you can search and apply to roles right from powertofly.com. I recommend you apply via powertofly.com as opposed to like an applicant tracking service or whatever. Mostly because it gives you an extra person who is looking at your resume and following your progress through the process of interviewing or hiring at the various companies we partner with. So I very much recommend it. But the other thing I want to encourage y'all to check out is the Follow Network. Now it's this big pink button up here. Basically, it's going to do some really great things for you in your job search, but if you want details on that, you got to hang around till the end of the video. So I'll let y'all know some ways you can maximize this page for your own benefit during the job search and some of the ways that Power to Fly can help you out with that. All right, so like I said, check out Moody's company page for sure, especially if you are interested in working with them. Very, very much encourage it. Now, joining us today on behalf of Moody's is Maria Lee. Now, Maria is the Managing Director and Head of Relationship Management for Asia Pacific with Moody's Ratings. Now, as a Managing Director, like I said, she has more than 2 decades of experience in finance, and she's been managing culturally diverse teams for more than 10 years. Now, Maria is passionate about empowering and developing female talent, and she's also a mom of 2 daughters, ages 16 and 11. Maria, I'm so happy to have you join me on stage today. So happy to have you share your time with us. Is there anything else you would like our audience to know about you before we dive into questions?
Hi, Meg. First of all, hi to everyone. And I am actually calling from Hong Kong. So it's evening time for me, but very good to be here. I'm so glad to be speaking with all of you. And thanks, Meg, for hosting me. Yes, I mean, I've been in the finance industry for more than 2 decades. I've actually spent more than 10 years, 15 years actually in total with Moody's. Of which 4 years were actually on the analytical side, being a credit rating analyst. I actually left, and I'll talk about that later. And I returned to Moody's to join the commercial team, the relationship management team. And I've been with this team for more than 10 years now. So happy to share my experience and also my journey throughout the last 20 odd years in my finance career.
Awesome. Love, love, love it. Okay. Let's dive into some questions here. I do want to highlight for our audience members, especially if you've never been to a Power to Fly event before, we're going to be going over some of the questions that y'all asked at registration. Now, if you asked a question, that is awesome. If you are unsure if we're going to have a chance to answer your question, ask it live in the chat. Okay. I've got eyes there. If you have any questions, anything that occurs to you, please, please, please feel free to ask. I'll be keeping track there. But just remember, y'all, you took time out of your day to be here with us live. We want to make sure that that's worth it, that we bring you value for the time that you spend with Power to Fly and great companies like Moody's. So if you have a question, ask early, ask often. That is the best way to get your question addressed. And if we're going over one of your questions and maybe there's some details that we should know, some context, maybe we're just not coming at the question from the right angle, let us know in the chat. Let me know what you're feeling, what you're thinking. If this is your question, we would love, love, love to hear from you. So, all right. So to get us started here, let's talk a little bit about career development and kind of some of the ways that you got to your current role. What are some of the steps that you took to advance from an analyst position into your current role as managing director?
Yeah, sure. As I mentioned earlier, I'm with Moody's Ratings. But for those of you who don't know Moody's well enough, Moody's Corporation is a global integrated risk assessment company. And the Moody's Ratings company is the credit rating agency part, which is where I'm from. I started my career with Moody's Ratings as a credit rating analyst back in 2006, I believe it was. I spent about 4 years doing the analytical work and giving credit ratings to companies and financial institutions. But then after 4 years, I took the leap and left Moody's analytical position to join an investment bank to take on a credit rating advisory role. Back then, at that particular investment bank, they actually did not have that function at all. And I came across this opportunity to join them and actually to help them start this new team, new function. So it's a very different role. It's much more client-facing than my previous analytical position. It also gave me an opportunity to expand a team, to basically build a team from scratch. So I expanded, the team from a one-man band, who I was the only one when I first joined, to ultimately a team of 4 under my management after about 4 years. And actually, after that, I mentioned earlier, I returned to Moody's. I left Moody's for the first time, but then I subsequently returned to Moody's and again took the leap to join a very different team, the commercial team, not the analytical side, but the relationship management side, the business development side, which is where I am now. And this role, I found very interesting at that time when I had the opportunity, because it's a role that, I could leverage both my analytical experience and also client relationship management, as well as leadership experiences that I built, in the investment banking days. And, in the commercial group, when I rejoined, over the last decade, I've been with the same team. I would say, steps that I took were basically around, expanding my management responsibilities whenever the opportunity arose. I always raised my hand to take up more. I said yes to many stretch assignments, such as expanded responsibilities, global projects, etc. And therefore, as a result of raising my hand and taking up more, my role luckily was expanded from being an individual contributor when I first joined to a manager of a relatively small region, and then to a leader of a slightly bigger region. And then ultimately, my responsibility expanded to more other regions, and then finally to the rest of the Asia Pacific region, which is what I do now. The other sort of key step that I would say that I took was, I will always seek for mentors and sponsors. And I personally believe that, investing in this is very crucial for career progression. And therefore, I actively did so. I have to say I'm very lucky to have very strong mentors and sponsors over the course of my career who encouraged me, advised me, connected me with the right people, and also taught me by example. And I would say that, looking back, throughout that journey, I've had both male and female mentors and sponsors, which I think was very, very powerful.
That's awesome. Now, as you're speaking and kind of telling us about some of these times when you've raised your hand or you kind of reached out or got availed yourself of a mentor or something like that, how did you identify and capitalize on those growth opportunities? When did you decide to raise your hand? How did you decide where to start your skills development? What was that like for you as you were kind of looking up at where you wanted to go?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I would say that, I do constantly look for opportunities to learn. Personally, I think seeking out diverse experience is very useful preparation for, leadership position. To me, my career is a, learning journey with no limit, honestly, right? The sky's the limit in terms of learning. So yes, I'm never shy to say yes to an additional work outside of my remit. For example, I mentioned, special projects that came about, that I found interesting, but also, projects that would help me learn a new skill or get me, different exposure. I would, say yes to those, leading special initiatives, and even, simple things like stepping in for someone else. For example, if someone is on maternity leave, someone else needs to sort of be the backup, I would say yes to some of those opportunities if I think, I have the capacity to do so. And also, that particular opportunity may give me new exposures. I have a, belief, I don't like to think about immediate return when I capitalize, growth opportunities, but rather see every opportunity as an investment in myself. I think it's very important to maintain a growth mindset and also lean in, right, when the right opportunities arise. But of course, having said that, right, you cannot say yes to everything, right? You still need to remember to set boundaries, and there will be opportunities that are not that great, for whatever reason, whether, you're just not ready to take on, a particular challenge, or you don't have the capacity or bandwidth to do that, I think, it's perfectly fine to say no if you need it as well.
Now, just as a personal, as I'm listening to this, I'm kind of thinking in the background. I'm wondering for you, do you think that as you were progressing and looking out, like, seeking out these opportunities, were you chasing like your own curiosity, or was there like a game plan that you were trying to follow? Because I feel like sometimes people get stuck, right?
Yes.
Whether even if you don't have a game plan, those people kind of seem are like, well, like, I don't know where I'm supposed to go first. And if you do think you have a game plan to go forward, there's always people that are like, oh, but am I limiting myself? You know what I mean? It kind of feels like no choice is the right one.
Yeah.
What was it like for you when you went through?
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely you got to strike a balance between, saying yes because you're curious and saying yes because it works well for you based on your game plan.
Mhm.
I would say, personally, throughout my journey, a lot of it, initially when I was probably a bit younger, I was more, how do you say it? I would not set boundaries as much for myself because I intrinsically, I'm a very curious person. I would say yes to a lot of things just
Yeah.
simply because I feel like I want to do it. I want to learn it.
Yeah.
But, as I progressed in my career, I realized that you just simply cannot do it all. So, I learned to have a game plan, right? I did have sort of, an aim, right? Whether it's, what do I want to do next, right? After this, would this opportunity or would this experience give me additional skills or prepare me well for that next step? I would think about that. Increasingly, I have been thinking about that more. But of course, right, I think curiosity is also fine. Sometimes, as I said, the growth mindset is important. You just cannot be overly calculating. You just don't know. Sometimes you lean in and do something simply because of curiosity, you may actually reap a lot of benefits out of it without
No,
knowing.
absolutely. No,
Yeah.
I'm a student of curiosity, right? Like, I will forever be a student because I like learning new things. It's part of the ADHDer in me, the bipolar in me. Like, I seek out these like new experiences and, oh, that's shiny, let's try this.
Yeah.
And so I think it's kind of nice to know that you can have a mix of both and
Balance.
not feel like you're, wandering off into the forest. The other thing
Yeah.
is truly, like, you don't know what experiences or what skill set might be valuable later, because like,
Exactly. Right.
yeah, I mean, look at it, like 5 years ago, not even five, let's not say 5 years ago. Let's go like 8 to 10 years ago. This job did not exist. My job was not a thing. So like the fact that the world is growing and changing at the pace it is means that, like,
Absolutely.
yeah, like forward planning is great and we want to do that, but be realistic. Like, remember
Yep.
the millennials, okay? Everything can just turn on a dime, and you might need to know how to can peaches for the future, or you might need to know
Exactly.
how to, do that cool Excel trick that you saw once. So,
Yeah.
all right,
Absolutely. Totally
on
agree.
these, as we're looking out at the field, massive sprawling fields of all of these skills we could acquire, are there any that you think are more crucial for women who are aspiring to leadership roles, especially within the finance industry?
Mm. First of all, and this is learning from experience, I think it's absolutely important to be willing to take calculated risks and get out of your comfort zone. Um, especially in finance, it's an ever-changing world in finance, and there are rapid changes that may come, to the finance world, and it completely change how we do things. We could talk about AI, we could talk about technology, right? How these things affect how the finance industry is changing. But I think it's absolutely necessary to get out of the comfort zone, take some calculated risks. Don't just keep doing what you do, right? Think about, potentially how you do things differently to be more effective, even though it involves, something that's completely different, or applying a completely different set of skills. It is important. The other thing I sort of touched upon already was, because of the fast changing nature of finance, and like many other industries, not just finance, I think the adaptability to fast change in market and also customer needs, I think, is absolutely crucial. And then the next one, I think, also learning from experience, and I've been mentored on this a lot, build a reputation for expertise and reliability, i.e. your personal brand. I think it's so important, well, especially for women, um, to build your personal brand. I mean, it's not just women, to be fair, it's, everyone, right? If you want to, excel in your career and get into leadership roles, building a personal brand is very important. And last but not least, very simply, speak up. Please speak up. Share what you think. Don't be shy. You always have a lot to offer.
Can I just tell you how much I love that most of the ones that you specified as like absolutely do this are things that we generally somewhat pejoratively refer to as soft skills. Like these are skills that are applicable in a lot of different fields, right? Like
Yep,
the
exactly. Not just finance, right? Well, to a lot of industries, to almost everything.
which means if you have been paying attention to any chat that I have hosted in the last 5 years, uh, if it's a soft skill and it applies to a lot of things, that generally means that it's a skill that you can pick up in a lot of different industries, in a lot of different places. And it could possibly, especially if it's like communication,
Yeah.
like reliability, that kind of thing, like that, these are things that can be built outside of the professional world as well. So like
And
these,
transferable, right?
yes.
You may not stay in finance forever, right? You may want to do something completely different, but some of these soft skills are definitely transferable.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, as somebody who went from, I mean, granted, millennial, so I graduated into a horrific job market, but as somebody who went from English major to art history pre-law, went to law school, then was like, no, this is awful, drops out of law school, goes to purchasing in a production manufacturing facility for Windows. Then I was in audiobook publishing and now I'm in here. So like, you don't know where your life's journey is going to take you,
No,
but I can tell you for sure, my communication skills have served me very well. So
absolutely.
I absolutely love this advice. I love this. Okay. All right, let's talk about leadership strategy. Now, you have built and led very high performing teams, especially like we talked about in the finance industry, in the finance field. What approach do you think is necessary to build these teams that you want to be like just, rock stars? Do you think there's anything specific that's needed to build these teams? And do you think it's specific to the finance industry?
Mm. Um, I mean, I okay, specific to the finance industry, I mean, given the nature of it, being usually quite global or regional, I think building a diverse team with different backgrounds and experiences is very important. This just like my team, because I run the relationship management team for Asia Pacific, to serve, Moody's ratings customers, in all markets within the Asia Pacific region. So it is very important to have a diverse team with different backgrounds to address the need of our global presence, and customer diversification, but also the local needs, right? The different, regions, customers may have different cultures that we need to be aware of. So building a diverse team would definitely help that. Based on my experience, I think, one way that I approach, building and leading, high performing teams is leading the team with both empathy and grit. I think it's so important to find a good balance. Um, you want to be empathetic, but you also, want to be able to help the team to face challenges, and sometimes you have to call the shots, right? Even though it's a collaborative environment. And especially in finance, as I mentioned many times, right, it keeps changing, the customer needs keep changing, the landscape keeps changing. It's extremely, so some people, you may use the word cutthroat, more cutthroat than some other industries. So I think being able to lead the team with grit is important. I'm also a strong believer of a collaborative team. It's not as effective if you have high performing individuals just doing their own thing and not collaborating with the rest of the team. It's always stronger together, right? If you have great performers and they are collaborative, they combine force and to achieve, a common goal, I think that would be very powerful. But of course, while we foster a collaborative team environment, it is also important to recognize individual successes and contributions in order for, the team members to feel that, their efforts and their high performance or their great performance is being appreciated. And last but not least, I think, communication, right, is very important. When you want to build and lead high performing teams, you need to ensure that there's a shared understanding of individual and team goals. And also, it's very important to set clear expectations, so that, the team knows, what are they working towards. So I think those are key sort of strategies that I've been using to build, high performing teams.
I love that. All right, now, so we've talked some of the strategies. Let's pull back a little bit and talk about leadership style. Do you think that there's a specific style, or do you think there's a style that you employ that's been most effective for your role?
Sure. Yes, I mean, I would speak on behalf of Moody's, because I've been with the company for a long time, and the culture, is something that I really appreciate. And I would say the leadership style that I would find most effective, working at Moody's Ratings, and specifically in my role, I think would be a style that's inclusive, um, facilitative, and adaptive. You mentioned diverse teams, right? I do think, I definitely benefit from having a diverse team with diverse cultural backgrounds and experiences, because they bring different perspectives and also local knowledge to the table. So I think, running a diverse but inclusive team is very, very powerful. Of course, this means the leader needs to listen well to the diverse perspectives, but while retaining the ability to take decisions as well. And I think I touched upon this, earlier on. I think lead a team with empathy. So I like to lead with a personal touch, i.e., I want to have the ability to build connections and rapport with people at different levels, not just, maintaining sort of a business relationship only. I think, having that personal touch is a very, effective leadership style, at least, where I work. I think that's definitely powerful. But of course, even as you do all of this, right, a leader should not hesitate to hold people accountable and have the difficult conversations, which are necessary. So I think inclusive, I think I mentioned facilitative, and adaptive, I think would be sort of the leadership style that I find most effective.
I like those. Now, you had mentioned earlier in this response, talking about leading with empathy and grace, and how those have been very invaluable. Do you think that those, let's see, how do I put this? Have you had an obstacle in your past, in your past leadership experience where you had to utilize these things? And how did you face that challenge?
Yes, I could already think of a very good example. I mean, first of all, of course, right, as a senior leader, you would expect that, a senior leader should face many challenging leadership situations, and, they would come in different shapes and forms and sizes. For example, managing difficult conversations around performance issues. That's one thing that, we all need to do. I just want to quote, our CEO, Rob Fauber, at a recent company town hall. I think, I really liked how he mentioned that, I think there was a question thrown at him, do you face challenging leadership situations? How do you deal with them? And he said, look, of course, right, as the CEO, I'm the most senior person in the company. I should be handling the most difficult situations, because if I am not handling the most difficult situation, that means, my people in the organization are not doing their jobs, right? Only the hardest ones, right, would be escalated to me. I think that's so right. So, coming back to sorry, I digressed a little bit, but coming back to your question about how, an example of how I have to use empathy, when I lead. I actually have a very recent sad story, actually, but I'm willing to share, because it definitely required me to have a lot of empathy. It's a very challenging situation that I faced recently. Somebody designated to be my successor, a close colleague as well, was suddenly diagnosed with a very serious illness, a terminal illness. And therefore, she had to, of course, she was out of the office all of a sudden because she was diagnosed, and she had to deal with her health problems right away. It was a shock to the team and to all of us. Um, you know, and I had to, she's actually a people manager as well. And she's a very strong people manager who's one of my direct reports. So at that time when she had to go on medical leave immediately, I had to apply my empathy, or I had to jump in to support first of all, my friend, my colleague, right, who's ill, right, and to show her empathy and support and make sure that she feels comfortable to leave work aside and really deal with her health issues. So at that time, I was very upset because it was quite a serious illness, knowing that a close colleague is facing such life challenges. I had to deal with my own emotions on one hand, but on the other hand, right, work has to go on. And I had to look for a temporary replacement. I had to start thinking about, okay, now what, right? She may be out for an extended period of time. How do I help the team? Should I look for a temporary replacement? What is the support mechanism with the view that, she may or may not return? I had to jump in to make sure that I take good care of the team that's under her management, to make sure that I provide support to her direct reports, work directly with them, to come up with immediate client management backup plans as well, because, obviously she had to leave, a lot of her client management work to all of us. So we had to reshuffle responsibilities and jump in to support each other. So, unfortunately, in the end, I lost that dear colleague. She did actually pass away from the illness. So I'm still, and the team as well, are still dealing with the situation now. But what I learned from that is, life can be unpredictable. We're bound to face unforeseen situations, and therefore we need to be very adaptive. We need to be prepared to apply a nimble mindset and have backup plans for key personnel to avoid key man risks. But more importantly, I think maintain a positive mindset, and great teamwork always help, right? So that's why, I think leading with empathy is very important. And I have to say, the worst has passed us. I think the team went through a very difficult time. But, with empathy, it's not just me, having empathy, it's everyone in the team having empathy for everyone else. I think, that really helped us, sort of get through the challenging situation.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us. And that's intense. I've only worked actually, I think I've worked two places where somebody has passed while I worked there, but it was never anybody within my own department. And so it was one of those things that you could sort of see the ripple effects in the department a little bit, depending, obviously, it's different depending on the person. But yeah, I think you're right. I mean, that's a large challenge to have to face. And you're right. It's one that, like, you might go your entire career without ever having to handle this, or you
I
can
hope
have the
not. I
opportunity.
hope I don't have to handle this ever again. But
Well,
it's
it
very
makes me
sad.
wonder. Yeah, because like right now we've got the most amount of generations working in like office space
Yeah,
at the same time. So
yeah.
I would imagine, yeah, this is probably going to be something that happens more, or at least, might happen in your org, if not your department. But yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Um, okay, do you think that there have been any gender specific challenges, like any obstacles that you've come across within, as a leader in finance that you think have been gender specific, because you're a woman or because you're in a male dominated field? Do you
Mm,
think that there have been any, I know this is probably a silly question. Do you think there have been any of those challenges? And if so,
yeah,
would you share one with us?
sure. I mean, I definitely have come across some obstacles, right? As a woman in finance leadership. I mean, first of all, and it's not just finance, I mean, it's across all industries. I would say just simply the need to juggle work and parental duties, right? Like pregnancy, childcare, right? that could be quite challenging. And of course, that requires effective communication with your manager, right? Very, good time management, and more importantly, setting boundaries. It is an obstacle, but it's not something that we cannot overcome with the right, level of right way to communicate and manage your time. I think another thing, of course, right, that I've encountered, is, and I'm sure a lot of people have encountered the same, gender bias, right? And I have to say, mainly unconscious bias, to be honest, right? I think nowadays, I do feel that, there is less conscious bias, at least in finance. But definitely some unconscious bias that I've encountered. Assumptions that female leaders are weaker in nature, right? When a female leader is ambitious, is she aggressive, right? I mean, ambitious versus aggressive, right? Definitions. And also, I think, there's always a bit of an assumption that female leaders tend to be less vocal, right? At times. I mean, all these are unconscious bias, right? I think the other sort of obstacle to some would be access to networks. I generally, feel that sometimes women may have less access to informal networks, which of course are crucial for career advancement. So I think that's also, an obstacle for women in finance and maybe other industries as well. But of course, right, the key is to be aware of these potential obstacles. I mean, awareness is the first step, right, to overcome them. Yeah.
When it comes to the networking aspect that you mentioned, as you were talking about that, I was picturing something like, like if there's a group that goes to happy hour after work,
Yes,
on Thursdays, or if there's a golf,
exactly.
people that go golfing every so often, or, I think that I'm picturing probably tend to be more like gender kind of things, you know what I mean? Like things that would
I
isolate
think so.
their, and honestly, not to make everything about gender, but I feel like a lot of the time it kind of is that basis to start with, right? Because it's sort of like the idea of like water cooler chat happening like organically versus if you work in a virtual space, you have to like make an effort to make that happen. Whereas
Exactly.
like the default used to be, well, we're all guys and everybody likes to golf, so the company outing will be a golf trip or something. And so,
Yeah, or like
yeah.
guys go to happy hours, is that right? Go to drinks after work
Well,
and
moms have to go pick up kids from school where
exactly,
yes,
or they're
like
gonna be with the kids, right?
practice and homework and yeah. So
To
when
be
I'm thinking of like these, invisible
yes,
networks, it's not really like a cabal of like we have to keep the women folk out. It's just sort of like you might not think why that person doesn't feel as included or why like, you don't or you're not thinking about the kinds of opportunities that you have gotten from your, ability to be in these specific
yes,
rooms.
exactly. That's exactly what I was referring to.
I like that. Okay. I want to put it to the audience as well. We've got about 20 minutes left here. I want to know how y'all have dealt with gender bias or stereotypes in your career. So like weigh in, y'all. I want to hear, like, did you fight against it? Did you kind of sigh and roll your eyes and just, save your energy for the real fights that you needed to pursue? Did you go have a cry in your car? Because I have absolutely done that at least 3 times in my work history. So I want to know from you all. Chime in the chat. Let us know how you have dealt with gender bias or stereotyping in your careers. I want to know, what other people have done, whether it's been successful or not, y'all. It doesn't, no shame. Okay, so as we've been going through these questions, obviously, like, a lot of this stuff has led us into kind of the gender binary. And I feel like one of the aspects where that is, especially the binary kind of still exists in ways, is when it comes to work-life balance. I feel like work-life balance tends to be stereotyped in a different way for men than it does for women. What do you think, how for you, do you think a lot of the work-life balance issues in your career have been gender-based? Do you feel like a lot of it has been, caregiving and saving of time to be a wife and mother? Do you think that it's been, or do you think that it has not been along those lines and your work-life balance is probably kind of the same as what a lot of people have encountered in their lives?
Mm, I would definitely say that, being female and especially being a mother of 2 children, it does have an impact on my work-life balance because as you earlier mentioned, right, for example, if some of my male colleagues, right, could go out for drinks after work, I may or may not be able to join because I need to rush home to check on homework or to just spend time with my girls. So it does affect, my work-life balance a little bit. Um, but, having said that, I think, maintaining work-life balance is not gender specific. I think it's relevant for everyone. And, for me, I could share some, how I think about maintaining work-life balance. I mentioned earlier time management. I think effective time management is absolutely, key. It is important to prioritize your responsibilities because, face it, right? All of us living in this new age, right, have so many responsibilities, right? But how do you prioritize them? How do you manage your time accordingly? And I would share with the audience here, I used actually my coach in my executive coach actually introduced me to the Eisenhower matrix, which I find extremely useful. And for those of you who are watching, do read up about the Eisenhower matrix. It gives you some, a good framework for effective management, time management, and prioritization of responsibilities. I think the other thing that I learned from experience throughout my career is the ability to delegate and empower my team. We can't do it all. No one can do it all. I can't do it all, right? You can't do it all. So delegation and empowering the team is very important for all leaders. And also, I mean, it is in my interest to develop my people and help them step up because their success, right, has a direct impact on my success as well as the leader. And I think the next thing is, you got to understand what is important to you outside of work, right? Life is not just about work. What else is important to you outside of work? Of course, not everyone is a parent. Not everyone, has, the same sort of priorities outside of work, but, family could be one, well-being, right? Could be what's important to you outside of work. Self-development, learning, for example, could be another one. So don't ignore your needs and forget about life outside of work. And of course, for me, I make a very conscious effort to maintain a healthy lifestyle for both the body and the mind. It's not just the body, but also the mind. I have a routine to stay active for the body, and to the for the mind to some extent, and also allow myself to have mental breaks, right? Whether it's taking, walks during the day when the day gets too hectic, or simply just taking holiday. I'm leaving for vacation next week, so I'm looking forward to that great mental break. And most importantly, accept that you can't do it all, right? I accept that I can't do it all. Let some things go and build a good support system, both at work and in personal life. For example, I definitely have help at home and I'm very grateful for that. I have a nanny who lives with us full time so that she could help, take care of the kids when I'm, busy at work. Ask for help. It could be, the spouse, it could be someone else. And at work, it could be, simply a colleague, someone in the team. So I think build a good support system is also important, to help you maintain that work-life balance.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it takes a village, right? And one of the things that I feel like has been more of a topic of conversation, at least lately, is the fact that like the Industrial Revolution is why we have a 40-hour work week. But like that was never designed to be like everybody works outside the home and then the home is also run by the house elves, I guess.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. A lot of it comes down to realizing that it may or may not look the way you thought it was going to look in your head, but that doesn't mean that it's not okay. The thing that you've built isn't what you need. But I like what you also said about like trying to find those supports in your life and realize that, if you need help, you need to ask for it, or you're not going to get it. Now that this is also coming from a very resourced position, right? Not everybody has the ability to have staff or to have people come help them, but you're never going to know if that aid is available until you ask. And I think once you do start asking, you will find that people are way more
Sure.
willing to help than you might think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like this a lot. Okay. Do you think that your approach to work-life balance has evolved throughout your career, and how do you think it has done so?
Um, yes, I would say my approach to work-life balance has definitely evolved. If I look back at my junior days, when I was more junior in my career, I think it was because of the nature of my role back then, right? It was generally easier to just leave the office and switch off. But of course, that was also pre-COVID days when, there was no virtual, not everyone had to bring the laptop home and there's no like, Zoom or Teams or whatever. But yeah, I mean, it was definitely easier as a junior to leave the office and switch off back then. That's of course just my personal experience.
Yeah.
Um, and as I got more senior and as my role expanded, and also because I work for a global corporate, right, it's inevitable to work longer hours and sometimes outside of local hours because, as I mentioned, I sit in Hong Kong in Asia, but a lot of my peers are in the US or in Europe. And also because of my regional and global responsibilities, I may sometimes, work actually a lot of times work outside of local hours. So this requires a lot more discipline, if you like, to set boundaries.
Mhm.
Um, and I would say I am, more empowered. I feel more empowered to say no as I got more senior. And of course, I also had to learn from experience because I just kept saying yes, right, when I was, feeling less empowered before. And that obviously had an impact on my work-life balance because I just simply said yes to every evening call that, came to my calendar.
Mhm.
Um, I think I learned over time, right, how to determine whether aspects of a job are truly necessary or not, to help me maintain that work-life balance. And therefore, I was able to prioritize accordingly, and say yes or no accordingly. For example, participating in an evening call where my view is not really important, where it's not needed, and maybe there's a recording, then, do I really need to get on, or should I be going to the gym or spending time with my family? I think, I really like that. I'm sure a lot of you have read Sheryl Sandberg's book, Lean In.
Yeah.
I always remember, one thing she said, right? Every job will demand sacrifice. The key is to avoid unnecessary sacrifice. If you're able to grasp that, I think you will be able to have a better approach to work-life balance in general.
I like that a lot. I think you're absolutely right. It definitely comes down to it's experience, right? It's because you haven't had an experience where somebody's, really taken advantage of your time, or you've never been in a role where you could work from home. So the idea of like having to create your own personal barriers to
Yeah.
like, yeah, I know my laptop's just down the hall and it's always turned on because let's be real, nobody ever turns their laptops off. So like it's right there. I had this thought, I'll just jot down real quick, right? And that was something that like I learned, it took me a very long time to learn of like, don't discount those little things. But like
Mm,
I remember one of my first jobs that I started, I was brand new. They wanted me inexperienced. And so I was just ready to work and learn, and you want to be the team player, right? And I was like a
yeah.
fish-faced, ignorant young whippersnapper and thought this was going to be great and didn't realize until like 6 months down the road, like until my husband actually pointed it out that like I was devaluing my own work because like I was
Mm,
salaried, but I was working like 60 plus hours a week
yeah.
but
And
like
the hourly rate becomes very low,
yes,
right?
I'm telling you, that's what those so when people say like know your worth, add tax,
Yeah.
look at how much they're willing to pay you on paper for 40 hours a week, break that down into cost per hour, and then if you look at your work week and you're working 60 hours more often, what you're telling people is that your work is actually only worth this much per hour.
Exactly.
Devaluing the amount of your work, like the value of
Right.
it.
Right.
So I think that was really important for me to learn early on because it's like, no, 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 no. It's not that I'm not being a team player. I am here and I want to do the work, and that's great.
Yeah.
But look and see whether you are averaging close to what you said you wanted to get paid per hour for the amount of work you were going to do with the company. But look and see maybe if it's not, because for me, like that was the way to take my work ethic, my like, Irish Catholic Midwestern work ethic, and temper it a little bit so that I was, yes, providing value, and yes, bringing my best self to the job, and yes, doing my best, but I was
It's still
also,
alive.
yeah,
Yeah.
realizing that like if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, they're going to find someone to fill this role that's not me.
Exactly. Yeah, that I mean that's harsh, but it's
Which
absolutely
sounds
true,
terrible in
right?
light of what you shared with us earlier. Apologies. That just like I just heard it back. But truly,
But
like,
sometimes it is important to remind you that, right? But there are things that are important outside of work, and you gotta, spend time on
yeah,
those things as well.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to know, have there been any initiatives or programs that you have either started or participated in that would promote gender diversity in finance? And if so, what was your experience with that?
Sure. Uh, I've done quite a bit within the Moody's environment. I mean, for example, actually Moody's is huge in diversity inclusion, including gender diversity. We have what we call business resource groups in Moody's, and they are set up to support and promote diversity inclusion, to empower employees and attract and retain talent, also raise awareness and educate employees on particular issues like relating to diversity and inclusion, but also to enhance collaboration and networking. There are many different groups, and I have been participating heavily in the women's, what we call BRG, Business Resource Group, and I'm also the executive sponsor of the generational BRG to support female, but also male colleagues of all generations. So that's one thing, and the other thing that I did with a number of another two colleagues, female colleagues in the office a few years back now, was to lead a what we call name it lean in small group, lean in group. It's a small group for female talent in the office to provide a safe space, if you like, to share experiences and discuss specific topics that are relevant to female career development. I really enjoyed those discussions. Yeah, I would love to do more in other sort of context and perhaps within outside of my organization as well. And I've also participated in a number of mentorship programs, and I participated in Moody's Senior Women Leadership Program a few years ago. It's a cross organization and regions program that connects female talent across the global teams and promote female talent development together. And also, I've been involved in a number of networking events, within the finance industry that are, very gender specific, women, basically supporting women career development in finance. So those are some of the key things that I would love to do more. I don't think I've done enough. And of course, right, participating in this event itself, I think it's, another great opportunity for me to promote gender diversity.
Very cool. Now we did get a question that came in the chat from Noemi. Noemi had wanted to know, how important has mentorship been in your career, and how can women in finance find these connections? So we've talked a little bit about, what mentorship has done for you, as well as what you've been able to do for other women through mentorship opportunities, which is amazing.
Yeah.
I love that. How do you think women can find these connections, especially if, like you said, a lot of things tend to happen in informal, networks that you may or may not be a part of or even be aware exist?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I think it's very important to proactively identify mentors. Whether it's within your organization, within your team, outside of your organization, within the industry that you operate in. I mean, it is, I think, it's your sort of responsibility to proactively seek mentors. I would share my experience. I mentioned this earlier on. I think I've been very lucky to be working, at Moody's, where mentorship programs are like a BAU thing, if you like. We have mentorship programs for every year from different groups, and just lots of opportunities for us to get connected with mentors and even mentees. I mean, I've been a mentor to a lot of mentees, and I've been mentored by my mentors as well. I think it's also important to make sure you participate in company-wide events if they are available, because these are informal networks, right, or networking opportunities for you to speak to different types of people from different roles or different backgrounds, different regions. I mean, that itself is, I think invaluable. You don't have to always be in an official, mentorship program in order to find, new contacts to learn from or simply just to connect with. But also, I think, this is something that I've been putting in my development plan for myself for years, and I've been, increasingly doing more of is expanding my networking or network outside of the company. So, look out for, of course, there are different, I think, a lot of the audience are from different locations. But for me, for example, in Hong Kong, I would seek, I even did that, right? I Googled, women in finance, right? And there are different associations and organizations that you could read up on and see which ones, right, would give you the right context, right, to connect with the right people. So do look outside of your organization, in your industry, or even, even, if you don't want to, if you want to connect, and I also find that invaluable, right? Connect with people outside of your own industry, right? You learn from others, from other backgrounds as well.
Yeah, I
So
love it.
it's really up to you to seek, right, opportunities to find mentors.
Yeah. You could also, if you're in America, at least, I have utilized the Better Business Bureau to find like women's business orgs in the area, especially when I moved. I moved from the Midwest to the East Coast for a while. And I also use meetup.com because there's like a lot of like non-work related stuff there, which is totally fine. And honestly, you can be networking all of the time because networking is literally just making friends. That's all it is.
Exactly.
It's connections. And it's whether
Yeah.
they're social connections or whether they're professional connections, doesn't necessarily even depend on the person. You can get both from one. So, I think that's really important to remember. And then I also love reminding people that like mentorship does not just mean from people older than you or people more experienced than you.
Totally.
You
Yeah.
can get
That's
mentored,
so true.
from your like by your colleagues. I have gotten mentored in various areas by people younger than me, people that are not at the same like professional level as me. So truly, like, when you think mentoring, don't just think of I've got to find someone to tell me what to do. That's not really what it
Exactly.
is, right?
No,
Yeah.
no, no. Yeah.
All right. So I want to kind of pull back here and look at the bigger picture. How do you think the landscape has changed for women in finance leadership since you started your career?
Okay. I definitely see more companies being mindful about gender equality and making conscious efforts to support the development of female talent and leaders. For instance, Moody's, right? I could speak on behalf of Moody's. We embrace gender diversity and equality in the workplace. If you go to Moodys.com, there's a whole section on gender and finance that talks about how we promote gender equality in our workplace and how we support diversity, equity, inclusion as a business priority, and how we're committed to it. I also see more women in leadership positions in finance in general. I would share with you that Moody's actually published a piece of research in March last year that's titled "Board Gender Diversity Shows Correlation with Credit Quality in Advanced Economies." And we made a bold statement actually in that piece of research. Higher rated companies tend to have higher proportion of women on their board. So that shows how the landscape for women in finance leadership has really changed, I think, over the last sort of 2 decades.
I love it. All right. We've got 2 minutes left. I want to make sure we save time for thanks, but one question that came in from Mary A. She's a frequent flyer with us. Thank you, Mary, for this great question. How important has following your intuition been in your decision making as you've ascended the leadership ladder? How
That's
much do you think has
very
been intuition as opposed to like book learning, let's say?
Yeah, no, I think intuition is always very powerful. Of course, I would say, I mentioned, take calculated risk. So I would probably not solely rely on intuition when I make important decisions. I would like to also make informed decisions. I would do my best to get as much information as possible. But I would also rely on intuition, at some point, right, to sort of just cross that line and make that sort of final decision. Don't know if that answered your question, but I think it is a powerful thing, intuition.
Yeah, of course. All right, Maria, thank you so, so much. Obviously you're here today on behalf of Moody's, but I just want to say thank you so, so much for sharing your time with us. There's obviously a bunch of prep work that goes into this, and you make that very clear. You came prepared for today. So thank you so, so much for sharing your time and your expertise. I sincerely hope we get to do this again sometime.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been fun.
Of course. And I want to say a big thank you to our audience members as well. I know that many of you are here for the first time. If this has been your first event with Power to Fly, I sincerely hope it will not be your last. And if this has been your 50th or 500th, I'm so, so happy to see so many familiar names and faces back here. Now, as we go out, I see we've got questions up here. How would we describe Moody's company culture, favorite parts about working at Moody's? If you want to check this out, please feel free to pause. But truly, y'all, I just want to say a big thank you to all of our audience members who came. I have a job because you come to these events, but I am more proud of you for watching today, because you just took 60 minutes out of your day to do something positive for yourself and your career. That is not an easy thing in this day and age. So I want to congratulate all of you on this. Listen to Meg, whether you're a little treat person or not, give yourself that pat on the back, gold star, cookie, Starbucks, whatever your thing is. But thank you so, so much for spending time with Power to Fly and Moody's. We really, really appreciate it. Don't forget to check out their company page on powertofly.com. Click that follow button if you want to add yourself to the follow network and give yourself an extra boost in visibility on your profile. And we've got some great events happening coming up the rest of next week and the rest of August. So definitely check out our upcoming events and register for any that you find interesting. So go out, y'all, have the day you deserve, and we cannot wait to see you back here sometime soon. Bye.
Bye, everyone.